here with Matt Beisel to preview the 2018 cross-country seasons. Quickly approaching as we record this interview. I know that the place finishes last season in the GPAC 5th for the women and 6th for the men. Beyond just what that tells us, what were some of the main improvements that you saw last year?
Well, the year before, our women ended up in 6th, and our guys were also 6th. So last year, our women ended up moving up a place, and I felt like the guys were going to do that, and then Midland just, we were running ahead of them all season, and then they just squeaked by us by a few points and pushed us back into 6th. So Midland had a really good day, and so I feel like overall, numbers-wise, talent-wise, development-wise, our men and our women were ahead of where they were the year before. And then I have to take into account how indoor and outdoor track went this last year, because that plays a huge role in what we're going to be able to do coming in. We saw improvements in so many of our distance athletes from where they were in the cross-country season. And a lot of that factor is with our guys. Women have a little easier time adjusting because they mostly run 5K races in high school, and they're running 5K races here, but then the guys go from a 5K in high school to an 8K, which is 3 miles to 5 miles, and that's a huge change. And it takes freshman guys a little time to adjust to that. We saw that beginning to happen by the end of last season, where we had several really talented, accomplished high school guy runners who, by the last 2 meets of the season, really started to figure it out, and then they ended up moving up and being high place scorers for us within our group. So I think those are some things that are going to affect this year in a positive way.
Now, when you look at the way the makeup of your teams are pretty young last year, what does that do when you're in your second or third year in a program, and how do the expectations kind of change a little bit?
I guess I'm more optimistic than pessimistic. I always look and say what good can come out of this. And again, we have the situation we have. Coach Einspar did a fantastic job with his runners when they were here. I took over the program and inherited some really good kids. Our numbers were a little low, but we still had a pretty solid first year. And then we were very blessed with a group of 23 freshman distance runners my first year who were freshmen this past year. And now we've got another 12 really good freshman guys and girls coming in and a transfer who are going to make an impact. And so when you look at the total percentage makeup of the team, it's almost all sophomores and freshmen. The junior class, the year that I took over, was very small, and then our seniors, they make up a pretty good percentage of it. But I think we're looking at our seniors, and then a majority of them are young people, as you said. I think their enthusiasm's awesome. They're going to take their leadership. They're going to look at the older athletes for leadership, and I know we've got some positive, motivated leaders on our team who are going to kind of set the standard for what our new athletes, our guys and our girls, are going to want to be able to do. And I think there's only good that can come out of that.
Well, it's been a while since last cross-country season. I know most of them get to compete in track and field throughout the second semester as well. What are maybe some of the notable differences that some of them produced as they moved out of cross-country season?
Well, one of the biggest differences on the women's side is Taylor Grove. You wrote an article about her, and we did an interview, but she had a very difficult year last year. Again, the injury in the summertime, an accident while she was training, which led to her having to redshirt her entire cross-country season as a junior. And very discouraging for her, but she kept working and working on putting things back together again and getting strength up, and it started to pay off during indoor. And in indoor track, she was running well enough that she was able to place for us at conference. And then things really started to click, and she came to me and said, "Coach, I think I can run the Drake Relays half marathon and qualify for nationals," which 5 months before, we had no idea if she even had a shot at that. And so she ran the Drake Relays Half Marathon in April, ended up placing third out of the women, and ended up running a 2-minute personal best. And with that, she nailed her spot for nationals, went to nationals, completed her first marathon, got 17th in the nation. And it sounds like she's had a pretty good summer of training. I talked to her the other day, and I think she's ready to go. So I think that's a big development right there. You also look at some of our other runners. We have, for instance, a number of our freshmen last year, as they got into the track season, really began to develop, especially in some of the longer distance events. We also had returners like Rebecca Henricks, who had the best cross-country season of her life. Here's a young lady that ran 21:54 as a senior in high school, and ran 20:06 her freshman year, and then ran 19 minutes and 38 seconds at conference her sophomore year. Then she came into track. We dropped her down to some lower distances, and she ended up running 4:58 in the 1500 and placed for us. I mean, she had a great track season. And talking with her, she got lots of miles in this summer. So I think there's another one that could really come along. I could keep naming kids, but I'm real excited about that. On the guys' side, we have guys like Thomas Taylor, who was our #1 runner last year in cross country, who in track and field this year really just mentally made a huge leap ahead and was a very consistent performer for us in the shorter events like the 4x8, the 800, and in the 1500. He ran the best races of his life. He ended up running at nationals for us in the 4x800 and ended up running I think a 151 or 151.9 split, I think it was. I may be wrong on that, but it was still by far the best he'd ever raced in his life, and that entire season shows that. So he ran a lot this summer. He's another one that's going to come through. We have guys like Evan Ashe. Evan had his best cross-country season ever. He ran a PR in the half marathon in Midland in December. He ended up having a foot injury at the end of the outdoor season that kept him from performing, but his indoor season was good. So I could keep talking about guys like that. Freshmen, Jordan Lorenz, Christian Van Cleve, Cody Williams, Patrick Schneeberger, and I could keep going on those guys. They all developed this year. Christian Van Cleve became one of our 4x8 national qualifiers. Ran a 155 or 156, and he's going to be ready to go. So those guys have gotten good training in. Their attitudes are really fiery and upbeat and competitive. I've talked with them, and they're ready to do some big things.
Well, we look at the women specifically, like you said, Taylor Grove comes back this season after her injury. You lose Emily Deshane, but most of your key runners are back, and getting Taylor Grove back, what does that say for the outlook for them?
It's not all about one person, and we lost Emily Deshane, we gained Taylor Grove. So what are the rest of the team going to do to help make it all happen? We are in one of the most competitive conferences in the nation, and on both the men's and the women's side, we had 3 to 4 teams that were ranked consistently in the top 25 in the nation. Those are the teams that we just barely lost to. So you look at the fact that some of those teams ended up graduating some phenomenal runners. Dort, Morningside, and even Doane lost Michael Shavlik. We had, of course, Northwestern's a very strong team, and if you look at the people that were seniors for them who have now moved on, you could easily fall into the trap of saying, gosh, they lost those great runners who placed high at nationals and whatever. But then you look at the rest of their roster from last year, a lot of freshmen and sophomores who also ran extremely well. And so we've got to have all of our returning kids step it up. They know that they're going to have to run the best races of their life this fall for us to be a factor. And then, with the freshmen, it's again a learning experience for them. I think we have Hannah Rebman, a transfer from Pittsburgh State University, who will be a junior, and she's an accomplished runner who competed at the D2 level, and I think she's going to be another impact player for us. She's run, 19 flat, sub 19 in the 1850 in the 5K. So I think a lot of good can come from that. Does that answer the question pretty well?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. And the kind of the same thing on the men's side. Just what's the outlook look like? I know, like you mentioned, Thomas Taylor back, and so many guys that were freshmen last year. What will it take for them to make a leap forward?
I think it's going to be, as coaches, we can provide encouragement, motivation, good training. We can provide the facilities and the equipment that they need. But as I talked with the cross-country team yesterday at kind of our first big team building activity, I said, look, a lot of this, 90% of it is on you. And not just you individually, because you can't win a cross-country championship with one person. It comes down to each of you holding each other accountable with lifestyle habits, with what happens in training, where your mentality is, and how you're able to push and stretch yourselves so that you gain confidence as a team, and as a team are able to go out and make it happen when it's needed. And there's no easy answer to that, but it comes down to, I think I'm convinced that we have the men and the women on our team right now who can make a huge leap. And as I have told them, and they've told me, none of us are satisfied outside of the top 3 in conference. And we're not going to rest in anything until we are contending for a top spot. And that could happen as early as this year. And I certainly think that we've got the people who can do it.
Well, I know sometimes you add some in from track that haven't done cross country, or maybe did cross country, took a break. What do you add in that we can look forward to this year?
It's funny you ask that. We have a number of people who have been running middle distance and last fall trained separately, who, working with Coach Samuels, who's their coach in track, have decided it's going to benefit them and our whole team if they have the cross-country team as a training group. You think about the fact that so many of our cross-country kids are a big part of our national class relays, and so why not have them train together year-round? On the other hand, some of those kids can come up and really contribute. So we look on the girls' side, Tori Barron. Tori was the state champion in the 300 hurdles when she ran back in high school. She came into us, had a torn Achilles her freshman year. Unfortunately, it took her about a year to kind of get back into the groove, and then this last year she just took off. Ended up running 57.8 for us on a split in the 4x4, and she also has great endurance. She's going to run cross country. I know she doesn't know what she's capable of, but I have a feeling that she could become a key player for us. And again, it all depends on how it goes, but I think she's a tough girl. Mentally, she is a competitor, and I know she cares about her teammates. So I could see her, with no guarantees of course, but I could see her doing something for us. On the guys' side, one person in particular that jumps out at me is Josiah McAllister. Josiah is one of our top runners in track. He was the leader of our national class 4x8. He ran 151.22 this year in the 800, but he also ran a very fast 1500. Indoor, he ran like a 421 mile. And he's excited about doing cross country and being a player on our team. And I think he's going to be right up there with Thomas Taylor and Evan Ashley and those guys. I think adding him to the mix is going to be a game changer. He's again, like Tori, a fierce competitor, very smart, very team oriented, and he's a great leader. And I think having him as a piece of the puzzle is going to open some eyes in the conference this year.
I think when you come in as a new coach, maybe it takes a little time to see the vision that you have for the program really come to fruition. How close do you feel like you're getting to that point?
I feel like we're getting there as a staff, and this includes my throws coach at McLaughlin, Mark Samuels, who's helping with cross country but also works with our hurdlers and sprinters, Wayne Ernie, Jason Berry, our pole vault and jumps coaches. We talk a lot about this and about where we've come from, and I think, again, we have kids in place right now who have had great seasons, who have been contributors, and they're going to grow and really take off. But then you also look at the recruiting effort that all of us have worked together on, and we can, just for the past 2 years, have brought in really big classes that are talented, and most important, in addition to the performance piece of it, they're great people. These are people who care about others more than themselves. These are people who have a desire to grow in their faith life. And when you bring those kind of kids onto the team and they interact and the chemistry forms, anything can happen. And so I think that as far as my vision for where we are, again, it takes time. I want a closely knit team family. I don't think we're exactly where I want to be, but I think we're all making efforts to get there, and I think our student athletes are aware of it. A lot of them have come and talked to us as a staff and said, here's some ideas we want to do. And as coaches, we're going to continue to implement things that will help connect the student athletes together and help them to be a team beyond anything they've ever been. And it's been great. How can we make it even better? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, you kind of talked a little bit about the other conference teams and what's coming back. How long does it take you to get a feel for maybe where you stand? Maybe you have to get through a couple of meets where you're up against some teams in the conference, but
yeah, it's a little tricky with cross country because every course is different, and there does seem to be a trend. Some people would say, unfortunately, that every single person in college who hosts a cross country meet makes it as smooth and flat as possible because of the way the rankings are done, and so after a few meets, maybe mid-season is when we're really going to start to get an idea of how we shake it up. But at the same time, it all depends on how teams develop. On every team, you're going to have a great potential runner who has a bad season because of an injury or an illness. You're also going to have kids that were off the radar scope who just blossom. And again, it's not like track and field where we can see week by week mandatory reporting. They're all running on the same track surfaces where we can see how far they throw, how far they jump, how fast they run. There's quite a bit of gray area with cross country because you can say, Dort ran a meet up at this place and we were over here, and look, we're ahead of them. I've tried doing it, you match them up and go, we're a little ahead of them now, but then they come back when we're head to head and they end up, maybe changing the outlook. And so I think if we take it a meet at a time, our athletes have just got to compete. And it's not so much about times, in cross country, because the variability of things, it is about each person as a team and as an individual competing as hard as they can in every meet and then seeing how the outcome is. And it's tough to know. I thought we had a good shot at beating Midland and moving up last year, and they just had a fantastic day. And you look at Dort and Northwestern, who have consistently good performances because they have developed a lot of depth in their program and have built a reputation, and I respect those programs a lot. Doane, the guys' side at least, had not a gigantic depth to it, but they had the pieces in place to be able to have a very good run last year. And so, I want to be part of that, and I know our kids do too.